Hi, I'm here at Writespace in Houston's Silver Street Studios with Elizabeth White-Olsen, the director, and Layla Al-Badawi, the Events Coordinator for Writespace. So thank you for doing this interview. And Writespace has just concluded a festival, a week-long conference called Writefest. So we will talk about that in a second. But first, I'd like to ask you, both of you, why did you start Writespace itself? What was the idea behind that?
Well, I'm going to hand this to you since you're the founder of Writespace.
Okay. Yeah, fantastic. I started Writespace really, I think that my founding of Writespace was both personal and it was really, just in my heart, I really care for other writers. So on the personal level, I had two MFAs. I just graduated with my second MFA, and I didn't really have the creds to teach anything except for, freshman comp, which I taught and which is really important and valuable, and which just I didn't really want to teach again, even though I loved it. I really wanted something more challenging. And then on the on the level of thinking about others, I felt like in Houston there needed to be more opportunities for writers to get really great instruction outside of the MFA system. So it was a conjunction of personal and I guess social desires that led me to found Writespace.
Right. How old is Writespace now?
Coming up in 2 years, right?
Yeah.
We're going to
2
be
years.
celebrating 2 years very soon.
Yeah,
Right.
it's now March, and in June we'll be celebrating our second birthday. So we're still an infant.
2 years.
Yeah.
Well, I think you've come a long way in 2 years. Could you tell us some of the programs, some of the things you've done to create the kind of opportunities that Elizabeth is talking about? What are those opportunities?
Absolutely. Well, we do have workshops on a weekly basis. Every week we have workshops. Some of them are one day. Some of them span several weeks. We do manuscript consultations that Elizabeth and a few other editors will do to really sit down and talk to writers about their manuscripts in detail. That goes far beyond line edits, what you do. And I keep hearing that people are just so impressed with the consultations that they're getting from you. We run a monthly open mic that is free to the public where anybody can come and read. And what else do? We do so much.
We do young writers, workshops for young writers, which so far are small, but we're really excited to be able to offer them. We'll be offering them again this summer. We have both creative writing workshops for young writers and then college application essay workshops. And we're beginning to open up a new branch, which is something I've been doing on the side, but I've only done once at Writespace, and that's writing coaching for artists who are writing artist statements and bios. Really what we're trying to do is we're serving writers and we want to serve the community through our writing talents.
Right.
So those are the programs.
The young writers sounds very interesting. Is that something unusual in the, or did not exist in Houston before? Or?
No, actually there's a really fantastic organization here called Writers in the Schools. And I mean, they've been doing it a long time. What's different about Writers in Schools and Writespace is Writers in Schools, actually, they go into the schools. What we are doing is having workshops in our private space that happen, after hours, not during school time.
And manuscript consultations, Layla, are they for all different genres, for novels, poetry books, memoirs, finished memoirs?
Absolutely. Anybody who would like to have their manuscript looked at, we in the manuscript consultations and in our other workshops and everything, we don't really differentiate between genres. We'll work with new writers. We'll work with a raw manuscript versus something that is like a little more polished already. If you want to say anything more about that.
Sure, I'd love to. For our manuscript consultations, we do everything from line editing, which would be what we would do on a manuscript that's almost finished, to more developmental editing, where we help writers. We look at their manuscript and look more at content and look at the deeper levels of what's being addressed and what isn't being addressed. So we look at plot and characterization, tone, voice, and the writer's intention, and help to develop those through coaching. So that's a wide gamut, and
Right.
we do everything kind of in between those two.
Yeah. And have you had good feedback from local writers in terms of they were helped with their finishing the books or moving closer to publication with the consultations?
We have writers come back. Almost every writer who's come to us seeking our editing and consultation services has returned. So I've received personal emails about what a difference our editing services have made.
Every time that I've heard from a writer who's done a consultation with you specifically, they keep saying that you're amazing at asking questions to draw out information from the writer that they kind of already knew about their work, but didn't know that they already knew.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Fantastic.
That's a thing that I've heard several times, that you're amazing at asking just the right questions. Yeah.
Why didn't you tell me that a few weeks ago when I was having a crisis?
Because I was also having a crisis.
Right.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
So these are some ways that you have created, when you said specific opportunities for writers to learn the craft in ways that may not have existed in this large city, Houston, before, right? So you feel like in the space of these 2 years, you've filled some gaps, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And aside from even just filling gaps, because there's already some programs in the city that are really good programs, and I'm so happy to have them. But there are so many more writers than there are writing workshops.
Right.
There's definitely a need. Workshops here in the city sell out so fast.
Right.
And we're so glad to add to what the city has to offer for writers.
What about the background of the writers that you get interested in your workshops? Is there something interesting to be said about that?
Oh, gosh.
Compared to the more established, the MFA program?
I feel like we just get everyone. Anytime a writer walks in the door, we never know whether they're going to be from an MFA program or whether they're going to be somebody who's a lawyer by day and just feels like they need that creative outlet in addition to their work that they're doing during the day. Houston has so many indie writers, indie authors who have self-published, who still also want to learn more. So we get some of those too. We get students, we get stay-at-home moms and dads, and we get memoirists, we get older writers, we get younger writers.
We get people of all occupations. I've worked in a single week. I've worked with a pizza delivery boy and a hairstylist. The same week that I've worked with a man who's a banker in a very high up position in a bank, and is a very successful lawyer.
Right.
So it's people who have been doing other things, but have always had it in their heart that they want to write, and so that's why we're here, is to help them see that they can.
Yeah, and putting these people together from different backgrounds, different abilities, and levels of skill and years of experience in writing, that seems to me a big part of what Writespace is about. And we can sort of segue into Writefest, which I saw in practice. I mean, one of the things I really liked about this first ever, as far as I know, literary conference of this kind that's just concluded on Sunday. This was a whole week of this conference, and that was Writespace's biggest project by far to this date, right? So could you tell us about the conference, Writefest, how that came about, how you planned for it, what was going on?
I think a big part of why we felt like it was something that was needed was because we kept having writers come to our workshops who already took their craft so seriously and who've been writing for a really long time. But when we asked them, have you ever submitted anything for publication, a lot of them didn't feel like they knew how to do that or how to even approach that. They felt overwhelmed. They didn't know whether that was just for people who had done MFAs or not. So very quickly we kind of got the feeling that this was information that people wanted. Once we started inviting literary journal editors to come to our event that was going to be based on giving people this information, on running a conference that was based on literary journals and the submissions process and getting published this way, we realized that journal editors were just as excited about our event as writers were. So it felt like very natural to to put those two groups of people in a room, but that doesn't happen very often, surprisingly. I was surprised.
Let's pause here for a second, and we will continue the discussion about
It's good.
Writefest.
It's
Great.
I'm about to have a coughing fit.